Okay. Um, so I would prefer if you guys, use your mics or at least, typed in the chat if you guys had any questions or anything like that. Um, but let me ask the first question. Who here actually plays chess?
I play chess.
How about this? Type just so I get like a broad picture. Type one in the chat if you play chess, two if you are good at chess, three if you are like a grandmaster or really good, and zero if you have never played chess before in your life, or you don't know like half the rules, just like a complete beginner. Okay, so let's see. We got 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.5. Okay, okay, all right. So the biggest misconception I see that people have when they start teaching chess is they think they need to be a good chess player in order to teach chess. But that's not true at all. You don't need to be a good chess player. What you do need to know is how to interact with the children, make it fun for them. Um, so you're not really, too focused on making, trying to make the kids grandmasters. You're just trying to make them have fun. Okay. So let's see here. Before we start, does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Now, let's go over how we're gonna sorry let's go over before the class even starts. So you got a email from Bliss saying, we're gonna send you to a school next week. um this is the school, it's a chess club. What do you guys think you need before the school even starts, before you're even there? What do you think you need to do? Any ideas? Chess
I
pieces,
mean,
of course.
you need the chess sets, you need the big chess map kind of thing to show examples to the kids.
Of course, yeah, exactly. You need the demo board, right? Chess pieces. Now, I think everybody's gonna get around 10 sets, right? That's pretty standard. However, there are gonna be schools that have, maybe more than 20 kids. Um, so what you should do is look at the portal on your phone and see how many kids are actually in the club, right? Because sometimes they register a bit later on, and if you go there and you don't have enough pieces, it's not impossible to work your way around it, but it's going to make it a little bit trickier. Okay. Now, if you, for some reason, let's say you don't have enough pieces, like and the kids want to start playing, what could you do? Any ideas? How would you?
You could group them. You could say, you two are going to play against you two and just, discuss your moves before you
Absolutely.
make them.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay. All right. So, um, now let's go over the sorry, just reading my notes here, what I wanted to go over. Okay. So, let's go over when you arrive at the school. I think most of you guys have already done the basic like training, right? With Anna, right? Did you guys go over like classroom management, all that stuff? And yeah, yeah, okay, great. So okay, I won't go too in depth into that, but um, you know, you you arrive in the classroom, just leave it the way you found it. That's kind of been an issue in the past, but um, looks like you guys know about that. Okay, so now let's go over the actual teaching part. Um, has anyone here taught a chess class before?
I've assisted.
Sorry?
I've assisted with
Assistant,
chess
assistant.
classes, but I've not
Okay,
taught
okay,
one.
okay. Yeah, okay. So That's good. Anyone else? Assistant, I see a couple of people assisted. So I'm guessing last year you guys, you know, you guys assisted, and now you're coming on as instructors, right? Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen. You guys, can everyone see this? Yeah? Okay. The chess website. So this is actually, I'm gonna link it in the chat as well if anyone wants to, you know, come check it out. This website has everything you need to play chess, learn chess. If you want to brush up on your skills a little bit, this is where you'd go. Okay. Now, before we get into the chess part, here's how we normally break things down. Like how we break down the hour we have to teach the kids. So you arrive 15 minutes early. That's great. You know, you set up if you can. A lot of times you will go into the classroom, but you can't actually enter because the kids are still in there, right? So you don't have time to set up. The first 5 minutes is pretty important. Now, let's say you don't have time to set up. You don't have time to set up the board. You can't really get in the classroom. Um, how can you make a smooth transition between, starting the class and setting up? Because what usually happens is, kids start pouring into the classroom same time as you are, and the kids, are, getting rowdy, and you're trying to set up the demo board and you're trying to manage the kids. So what do you guys think? How can you work around this?
I mean, just start a little conversation with the kids, like, hey, raise your hand if you've played chess before, raise your hand if you're interested. And then maybe you could have one of the kids help you set up the demo board as well.
Absolutely. Yes, you're right. Uh, Honestly, the best way to do it is just to ask questions. So I see here someone said have them introduce themselves. Yeah, you could introduce yourself. Obviously, that only works on the first day, but ask them any questions. Like you just say, hey guys, raise your hand. Uh, whose favorite piece is the queen? Or just say like tell me your favorite piece, right? And why? And the whole point is to kind of just waste time to give you time to set up and get ready for the lesson. Okay. So yeah, the ask questions, icebreakers, whatever works. Okay. All right, let's say you have set up the board. Now here's going to be the hard part. How and what do you teach? Anyone anyone like to take a wild guess? Let's say you have a class full of grade 2 students. What do you teach? And this is what makes teaching chess a little bit hard.
Yeah,
One
start with the
piece at a
pawn.
time. How each piece move. Okay, the first move. Point out mistakes. Okay. Any other ideas? I mean, these are all like pretty good suggestions. Um, Nothing. Okay, nobody else. All right. Well, the truth is, you don't know what you should be teaching until you ask some more questions. Okay. So the way I do things, it doesn't even matter, if it's a new class or like a returning class. I will always ask the kids a few basic questions. So I start off like this. I start off with saying, all right, what is the name of this piece? Right, the pawn. And if they have played chess before, they will probably know the name of this piece. It doesn't mean that they're a good player, but at least they know the name, right? Then I move on to, okay, what's the name of this piece? If they say rook, chances are they know how to play chess. If they then I move on to the knight. If they say this is a horse or horsey or a pony, then I already know that, their level might not be very high. I probably could go over how the pieces work. But if they name everything perfectly, then it does not make sense for me to teach teach how the pieces move, because chances are they already know, right? And you could ask them. You could ask, okay, how does the knight move? It moves in an L shape, right? And make sure everybody kind of knows. Um, then I'll ask them questions like, what is this move called? And for those of you who don't know, this is called a castling, where you move two pieces at once, right? I asked them if they know how to castle, then that means they're pretty advanced, right? And then the final question I'll usually ask is, how do you win a game of chess? And usually you will get two replies. Either they will say eat the king, which means they are still beginner, or they will say checkmate the king, which you kind of have to double check that they don't mean eat the king, because checkmating is a bit different. But if they know how to checkmate the king, that means they are pretty advanced and they already know basic chess strategy, right? So these are the questions I use. You guys can obviously have your own questions that you've prepared. Um, and the goal is just to figure out where your class is at, right? Like if they're all advanced, you're not gonna spend the entire hour, going over how the pieces work. It just That would not make it fun for the kids, right? Okay, so I will give you a little advice that if you don't know what to teach on the first day, even after you have, you've asked all these questions, on your first class, teach the ABCs of chess. So, the ABCs of chess, and by the way, if you forget about this like little lesson, don't worry. Um, it's in the drive somewhere. You'll find it, or Anna will send it to you. Okay. So this entire lesson will be like in there. Okay. So the ABCs of chess is the opening principles of the game. Basically, how you should start, playing. Okay. Um, check, captures, attack. No, the ABCs. A stands for attack the middle. So when we're playing chess, we want everything kind of to go towards the middle, like our minor pieces, everything around the middle, apart from our king. Okay. So uh ABCs will be always good, because beginners will know what to do after your lesson, and even advanced players will improve a little bit, because they usually still make mistakes, so you can kind of set them on the right track. So the ABCs of chess work almost in any classroom. Okay, you could always do this lesson. So here's how the lesson would go. So I would, the kids, they're all sitting in front of me. I would say, all right, who knows about the ABCs of chess? And, sometimes they'll just start making jokes. Oh, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But anyways, ABC is something you should do every game. A stands for attack the middle. And usually I'll ask questions. A lot of my classrooms, I always try to ask questions as much as I can to keep them engaged. So ABCs, what does A stand for? A stands for attack the middle. The best two moves in chess is pawn to E4. By the way, if you don't know what E4 means, the board has letters and numbers at the bottom and the sides, so it's kind of like a grid formation, right? So E4 or D4, both these two moves are the best to start off a game. And someone might ask, well, isn't this move bad because the king is now open? Anyone have a reply to that? Is this move bad because the king is open? What do you guys think? As I have a lot of students, who say that. Yeah, yeah, you're making opening for pieces, right? Your bishop is free, your queen is free. right? But what about your king? Don't you want to keep your king safe? Well, you do want to keep your king safe, and even though you're opening it up with this move, there's no way for any black piece to attack it right now. It's only the first move of the game, right? But what is important is that you get your pieces out, which brings us to letter B. Okay, B stands for bring out your pieces. And by the way, don't mind this on the left. This is it's just saying what opening. I'm gonna hide that actually, so it's not too distracting. Okay, so B stands for bring out your pieces. You don't really want to play like this where you just start bringing your pawns to the middle. I see this all the time from our kindergarten students. Try to get the kids to stop doing this. They like to bring their pawns here, and then either they will capture or they'll just be at a standstill and just move the pieces in the back randomly. So we don't want them to play like this. It's not real chess. We want them to, kind of learn a bit of strategy, something that they could go home to their parents and show them, hey, you know what, this is what I learned. And the parents will see, yeah, the kid's getting better. So B's bring out your pieces. We want to bring out our knights, okay, and our bishops. And um, notice how the knights are going here, not to the right or kind of like in the middle there to block the king and queen. Now, I'm kind of going over this really quickly with you guys because we don't have too much time, but you could really drag this out depending on how your classroom reacts, right? So if they're like really into it, you could be like, okay, well, guys, let's look at this knight. We have like three options we could go to. Which one is the best, right? And you could go over it a bit slower. You could say, okay, well, this move, attacks the middle, right? Which is A, brings out a piece, so that's good. This move, let's see, this one does not attack the middle. And why is this move not so good? Well, because our next moves, if I go here, I will be eaten. If I go here, I will be eaten. So the only way to really move this knight is back. That's why this move is not good. Does everyone know why this move is not good?
You're blocking in the queen and bishop.
Yeah. And I usually like to make a little joke. I say, all right, guys, what's wrong with this move? Well, the bishop is now really angry. You this move, he's about to go out for recess, and then you say nope, indoor recess. Knight is now blocking the bishop. So, try to make it a bit fun. Um, little jokes here and there, right? So, anyways, let's get back on track. So you could do this, pretty much for all the pieces. Like you could go over the bishop, like which moves are good. Like this is okay, this is bad, this is good, this is good, this is horrible, right? And you could say like why? Well, here at the end, we're gonna lose our bishop. Here, this is okay, we're attacking the knight. Here is okay, it's good, attacking the middle, right? This is horrible. Why? Because you're creating a traffic jam on the 401. This guy cannot move anymore, and then this guy cannot move because the pawn's blocking. So, the bishop is honking at the pawn's honking at the bishop, and um, things are kind of just getting stuck, right? Okay, so we don't want our pieces to be stuck. We want, our pieces to be nice and happy, nice little places around the middle are attacking the knights. And then letter C. Now, C, a lot of times people will not understand castling the first time you show it to them. Or they will understand, but they'll like mess it up a little bit. Um, so I don't really go too in depth. Like even if they mess up, I'll correct it a bit later. But I quickly show them, how to do it. I say, okay, once you've got all your pieces out, you can castle. You can castle to the right, you can castle to the left. The king only moves 2 squares. And what the king does is he jumps 2 squares, and then the rook jumps over his head, does a little karate flip, and actually, I show with the demo pieces, like, oh, he's doing a karate flip, and lands right beside him, right? I say you could also castle to the other side if you want, right? Move here, the rook jumps over, and everything's great. Okay. Now, um, at the end, if I have a bit of extra time, and almost every class that I have, I try to show some kind of story to the kids. Not always, but a lot of times I'll show a story because I'll do like a lesson, and if they have the energy for it, I'll do it. If they don't, I'll just let them play, maybe do a story at the end. Now, does anyone know why we do stories, especially with kids? Why would you care about? Why don't I just go over like in like a monotone voice? Why don't I just like say, hey, this is the pawn and moves 1 or 2 squares? Well, stories just make it engaging. They make it fun. Well, obviously it depends on the storyteller, right? Um, but kids get way more into it when you tell stories, and then they tell these stories to their parents, right? Which in turn, that's why they keep returning, right? It's fun, yeah, and they remember stories better. Uh, so here's a story about one of my students who just learned the ABCs of chess, just like you guys, and he went to a chess tournament, and he said to me, he said, Mr. R, uh, I'm gonna win every single game with the ABCs. And here's how here I'm gonna have to use a different board for this. Here's how the game went. So my student said, "All right, Mr. R, you told me that I should go towards the middle," which is what he did. He went towards the middle, and then I asked the class, "Is this a good move?" And they're like, "Yep, it's a good move." Now black, instead of moving the same pawn as white, they moved their queen's pawn. So what's about to happen? And the kids are like, "Oh well, we're gonna have to, maybe capture them, or they'll capture us." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." But my student said, "Mr. R, you told me that after I bring out my pawn, I should bring out my knight." And the kids are like, "No, no, 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 you don't know what's going on." It's a horrible move. So I said, "Okay, so the pawn ate the pawn." And then my student says, "All right, Mr. R, you told me I should bring out my other knight next." And the kids are like, "No, what are you doing? What are you doing? No." And I'm like, "Yep, the pawn ate the knight." Then I said, "Okay, Mr. R told me I should bring out the bishop next." And now the kids are like, "Oh my God," they're like losing their minds. And the pawn keeps eating and eating. And eventually white moves out this pawn. I'm like, they want to get their bishop out, but now the pawn has eaten all the way to the end and turned itself into a second queen. Um, and I make like a funny joke that white tries to castle with the enemy queen, but he can't because it's an enemy piece. You can't do that. And so he ends up, just losing his queen. You got the queen back, but now black has most of the army, and white has pretty much nothing, right? So, and then I say, after I tell the story, each story has to have a point to it. So I say, well, um, like why did white lose? Why did white lose exactly? Well, because, you know, they were doing the ABCs, but they weren't really paying attention to their opponent's moves, right? So you don't have to do it in the exact same order. Um, so this entire lesson should take you about, I'd say like 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. So the first 5 minutes, you're kind of having like the icebreaker, you're kind of getting set up. Then 15 to 20 minutes, you're actually teaching. Now, the rest of the class is pretty easy. You say, all right, guys, find a partner, come grab a board, grab pieces, and just play. It sounds easy. It's not. I shouldn't say it's easy, but we'll get into some of the problems that can arise, right? Um, so they start playing. Now, sometimes you get an odd number, right? And as I think Samuel pointed out, if you have like an extra or You have too many kids and not enough boards, you can always, make teams and partner up, right? But sometimes you will have kids who either are really good at chess and they'll want to just play you, which let me say that let's say they want to play like this kid's really good at chess, but they really want to play you because none of the kids are a challenge. What can you do if you don't want to play them? Any ideas? Like, let's say you don't want to play them because maybe you want to watch over the class, or maybe there's some kids who are, troublesome. What can you do if you don't want to play a kid? Any
You could
ideas?
have that kid like observe another game and have them give advice.
Yeah, so yeah, you could make them basically your helper. Now I'd be cautious to do that. It depends on like their attitude, right? Because a lot of times the kid will just go up and start giving good moves to one of the other kids, and the kid that they're playing against will be like, "Hey, well, what's going on? Why is this guy just helping my opponent? I'm losing all of a sudden," and they get really upset. They get in tears. So, you know, if they're my helper, I usually say, okay, your job is to try to watch every board and look for people who are doing illegal moves. And if they're making illegal moves, you report them to me. Don't actually like handle it yourself, because uh, again, it depends on their how their what their attitude's like, right? So some of them are pretty relaxed and they'll like, just calmly explain, hey, this move is illegal. But if they're saying, oh, that move is illegal, you're stupid, that's a horror, obviously you don't want them to be your helper in that case. So somebody mentioned giving them a puzzle. Yep, that honest 100% that could work. If you can find like a puzzle to keep them occupied, and if they like doing puzzles, then yes. If they don't like doing puzzles, then maybe it might not work. Um, Make a tournament. Whoever wins gets to play a few on the final day. Yeah, actually, we'll talk about tournaments in a second. That could work. Make them play against a friend, but with handicap. Yes, exactly. So that's kind of like the main answer I was looking for. If there's somebody who's really good at chess in your club, start handicapping them. Say like, okay, you're gonna play against this guy, but you're gonna play with no queen. Then let's say he wins again. Okay, you won again. This time, no queen, and I'm taking away both your rooks. So you only have knights and bishops and pawns now. Oh, you won that game? All right, let's take away your knights and bishops. Oh, you somehow won with your king and your pawns? Honestly, at that point, I would just like pair someone else because clearly there's a huge skill gap. But, just keep handicapping until the very end. You just leave them with your king. Never had to go that far, but you could just go all the way to the end. Okay, you're not gonna win, just try to survive with your king. And a lot of times they'll just, use their king to eat all the enemy pieces, and somehow it'll be a tie. So yeah, all these like different scenarios is all about, just trying to problem solve. All right, great. So let's say your class is playing. Usually they play for about 30 minutes, but here's a problem that could arise. Let's say kids are starting to get bored because chess, unless you're like super into it, for a lot of kids chess is boring. That's what makes teaching chess a bit hard. Like how do there's like it's like a 2D game, you know, most of these kids have like iPads and games at home that they would rather play. So you need to somehow make chess, more fun than that, or at least, fun for the hour that they're there, right? Um, so a lot of times I noticed this around like the 45-minute mark. People will start to kind of lose their attention, or they'll finish their game and they're like, well, I don't really want to play another one. So what are some things you could do to, kind of re-engage them or make it, a bit more fun? Any ideas? Like the kid just says, you know what, I'm bored. Yeah, seems like a lot of you guys are stumped, which I'm pretty sure this is gonna happen to quite a few of them. Have a challenge for them. Yes, challenges are great. You could be like, okay, well, challenge for you. I want you to win the game without ever, moving your queen or something like that. Or play with without using your rooks, right? Or give them a puzzle. However, there's some easier methods where you could just say, well, okay, you're getting bored. Usually, what I'll do is I'll just switch partners. Right? I'll just switch partners because maybe they don't want to play against that guy. Usually, a lot of times when they're bored, it's more or less because they've lost the game. Kids who won the game don't usually get bored. It's like, oh, I'm amazing, right? And it's the kids who lost and maybe are feeling a bit down. They're the ones who get, quote unquote bored. They don't really want to play against that person anymore. So, you could switch them around, see if that works, right? If that doesn't work, then you could say, okay, you don't want to play anymore. Why don't you come help me out? Because I usually what I do is I walk around the classroom as they're playing and kind of just look at every board and see if people are, following the rules, making good moves, kind of giving them suggestions from time to time, and they could follow me around and kind of be my helper for the day, right? But the problem with that is now their partner is left without anyone to play with, right? So you kind of have to work around that, right? Um, if they're telling me, you know what, I completely don't want to play chess, I just, I'm tired, I have a headache, I usually won't push them. Like if they're actually like, tired, I'm like, okay, well, you could, go have a seat, put your head down, or you could kind of be a referee, go sit at this board and make sure everyone's following the rules. And all of the kids, kind of like that. Okay. All right. So we're getting to the end of the class pretty much, right? Let's say maybe there's like 10 minutes left. What do you guys think you should do in these last 10 minutes? Should you let them play until the bell rings or talk with them about the games?
Definitely give them like, it's, we have 10 minutes left, we're gonna need to start cleaning up in 5, because I know that they usually like really want to keep going and then you're out of time to clean up.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So clean up, right? Um, a puzzle. Uh, yeah, it depends how you want to do it. It depends on the class. If they're getting really rowdy, because I know some classes like I had a year or two ago, there was like 35 kids. And if there's like 10 kids at the same time who are getting bored and kind of rowdy, then I might even like clean up earlier and do like a puzzle at the end of them or tell them like a quick little story. Um, but yeah, so that like a puzzle could work for sure. But the most important thing is you get packed up, especially if it's a lunch program. After school, like there's a lot of leeway. It's the end of school, no one's gonna be coming into your classroom. But if at lunchtime, if the bell rings and the kids are still playing and the teacher is coming in and her students who are supposed to be in the classroom are coming in, that's gonna be a problem, right? So, on your first class, you could pack up a little bit earlier, maybe like 7 minutes before, just to see like how long it takes them. But most kids, I feel like they could pack up in like 1 to 2 minutes if you um, press hard on them, right? Um, so you know, make sure you pack up, right? Double check. I usually tell the kids like look around your table for garbage, stuff like that. If you don't forget your lunch bags. Uh, and that's pretty much it. Now, you guys said you went over procedure, right? So you know not to dismiss them like before the bell and all that stuff. So again, same thing as in the beginning. If you have some extra time to spare, just ask questions, right? Ask questions, be like, okay, so today we learned the ABCs. Who remembers? What does A stand for? A lot of kids will forget. Like a lot of kids don't even like care about the ABCs. You teach it to them. So the best way is to just constantly repeat like what you taught. So you say, okay, what did we learn today? Well, what are the ABCs again? Who can remind me? Right? And the kids will raise their hand. Um, a lot of different questions you could ask. A really good question, like if you really want to kill time, I ask where did chess come from, and then I don't actually like I'll get a lot of guesses, um, like oh it came from Canada, oh it came from the U.S. and it came from India by the way. So a lot of kids would just start guessing. I'd be like oh close, hot, cold, stuff like that, and yeah, like little trivia questions can be good from time to time as well. Okay. All right. Any questions from you guys in the meantime? No? Okay. Now let's talk about the tournament. Trying to find where my tournament sheet. So in a lot of my clubs, what I do is I run a tournament. Now it's up to you if you want to do this the same as me, or you just want to keep it casual club. Um, you kind of have to get a feel for if the kids actually want this or even need this. So most of the classes I teach, they're from grades 1 to 8. I would never really do a tournament for kindergartens, because it just doesn't make sense. They barely know how to play, and then adding like some sort of competition will usually make one person really happy and the other one's really, really sad. Uh, but for grades 1 to 8, those who, have um the emotional intelligence to play in a tournament and not get like too upset and kind of enjoy it. I'll do a tournament for those kids. So the way it works is every single game gets marked down. I usually have like a piece of paper, but you could use one of the Excel sheets that we have, which will be in your drive. So um, every game they play gets marked down. If they win a game, they'll come up to me, they'll say, hey, we won a game, come check it out. They get 4 points. 4 points for winning. If they make a tie, so nobody wins, they get 2 points. And if they lose, they get zero, right? Sometimes I'll give discretionary points where I'll give them like 3, another person 1 if the game doesn't finish on time, right? But one person was winning, the other person was getting like destroyed. I'll still give them 1 point. Now, the whole point of the tournament is for discipline, because when you add points into your classroom, they're basically a reward, right? Like they're kind of a reward for your hard work, right? So, uh, this tournament helps keep a lot of rowdy kids in check, because if they start misbehaving, you say, "Oh, you know what? If you're misbehaving, I'm gonna take away 5 points." And usually kids just hate losing points. Like like some kids like cry about it. Like, they just love points. So, anyways, the tournament goes on. It doesn't go on for one day. It goes for the whole like 8 week session that you're there. Usually it's 8 weeks that you're at the school, right? So you go on for 8 weeks. You run a tournament almost every day. Maybe not on the first day, but every day after that, and you record down all the results. Um, the way I usually do is just write the name, and then you know on my iPhone I'll just keep adding points as they go along. Now you might think that okay, but wait a minute, wouldn't the kids who are like bad at chess or new to chess hate this? And you're absolutely right. They will not enjoy it if you just give points for winning. So that will not really work here, because like half the kids will be happy, half the kids will probably be sad. Um, So what do? I add challenges. I add challenges almost every single day. And what are the challenges? The challenges will be based on what we learned that day. So after I've taught the ABCs, right? Attack the middle, bring out your pieces, castle, I will say, okay, guys, today's tournament challenge is to do the ABCs in under 10 moves. So it's not like you can have the whole game to bring out all your pieces. No, you need to do it at the beginning of the game, right? That's the whole point. You can't just like move your pawn up and then move this pawn up and then bring out your knights. No. So you have 10 moves to bring out both your knights, both your bishops, and castle. 10 moves. Okay. Now, Um, I would say, okay, go ahead and play. You know, call me over when the challenge is done. All right. So once they once they call me over, I'll come down. I'll take I'll mark the result, or sorry, I'll give them the 10 points, and they're like yes. And what does this do? It makes the gap between like the best player and the worst in your class much smaller because almost everybody does the challenge, right? The games that you win, you only get 4 points. Challenge you get 10 points, which is like winning 2.5 games. So what usually ends up happening is the person that's the top of my class at the end of the tournament will usually have around 100 points, and then the person at the bottom of the class will have like 85, right? And if you think about it, right, 8 weeks, that's 80 points, right, for just doing the challenge. So they just got kind of 80 points for doing the challenge. Um, Whereas the guy who won, they won a lot and they did the challenges as well, right? But when they look, okay, well, you know what, I was pretty close. You know what, maybe next session I'll do better, and they'll want to come back, right? If I had just done it to where, you only get points for the win, well, the person in first would have like 20 or so points, right? And then the person last will have 5, right? And then they won't really feel good about that, right? So that's why I do these challenges. Um, Again, also it's like a disciplinary thing, right? We don't if they're misbehaving, I'll just say, hey, I'm gonna take away 5 points. Oh, you're misbehaving again, then next time it'll be 10 points. But if they start to behave again, I'll give the points back. So I say, okay, you can earn them back, right? Oh, I took away 5. Yeah, you can earn it back as long as you know don't disturb anyone for the rest of the class. So I advise that you try out this tournament, but see if it makes sense for your kids, right? Like if they're still learning how to play, like you just learn how the pawn moves and how you're not gonna run a tournament. It doesn't really make too much sense, right? But if you feel like they kind of already know how to checkmate, maybe, um, or at least they know like some basic strategy, then you can, yeah, then you can run a tournament there. Okay. All right. Any questions about the tournament? No? Okay. Um, okay. I will show you one last thing. I'm usually not a fan of doing these in my classrooms, but sometimes you get a class who hates chess. Or like they'll get bored, or maybe maybe you didn't really like do a good job of trying to entertain them or keep them engaged. So there are some variations to chess, which you could, which could reignite the spark in a lot of kids. So if you look here, these are all the different variations. And you could, show some of them to the kids and see if that kind of gets them back on track. So a lot of ones that I like. So standard, right? This is like regular chess. These are all like the regular chess rules. Pawns move normally. Um, there's a game called anti-chess, which you could say, okay, well, if you don't like in regular chess, you're not having too much fun. Why don't you play anti-chess? And the kid like, anti-chess? What on earth is that? Well, in anti-chess, your whole point is the whole point of the game is to lose. And they'll be like, what? We want to lose in order to win? And you're like, yeah, well, yeah, here's how it works. You pretty much, what you do is you want to give away all your pieces on purpose. And in anti-chess, you have to, for example, like if they go here, you always have to take if you can. So right now, black can take this, so you're going to do that, right? A good move right now would be to just give away your queen, right? And then the kids will be like, what? I don't want to give away my queen. But you explain to them that in anti-chess, your whole point is to lose all your pieces. Now, believe it or not, this game's actually really, really good for training kids because you're constantly looking how to give away pieces when they're actually playing a real game. That still helps because they'll look to not give away their pieces, right? So this is anti-chess. There's a bunch of other variations here that you could incorporate into your classrooms. I'd highly suggest, you take a look at these, which again they're on Lichess here and they're also on the on the Google Doc. And again, I would not start off with, like my classes with any of these. This is only like kind of like a last resort. Kids are getting bored. They're not having fun. Let me change it up a bit. Maybe that'll kind of get them back to the table. Okay. So, all right. And last thing I'll say for you as instructors, if you want to get better at chess, or if you have a projector in the room, this website I feel like is amazing. This will teach you all the chess basics, right? So, let's say you don't know how the rook moves, like you just kind of go through it, right? Capture the star. Um, if you know the basics already, you can move on to, some harder stuff like capturing, maiden ones, castling. So this is really good for instructors. Also, teaching if there's a projector in the room. That's the only thing I'll kind of I'll leave with you. So, anyways, does anyone have any questions? I think we're pretty much done. No? No questions? Okay. Well, if you do have any questions, let me know. You can always email me or give me a call. Will classrooms already be stocked with boards? Um, Not usually. Sometimes, but not usually. Most likely, you guys will get a bag of like 10 pieces or 10 sets, maybe 5 sets if you're not driving. But yeah, no, usually the classes will not have it. Yeah. Okay. If you don't have any questions, then you're free to go. If you do, you could stick around and ask. But anyways, I think we're done for today. Um, and good luck. Try to have fun yourselves too, because teaching, you know, it's fun. I feel like you can make it fun. If you make it fun for yourself, you make it fun for the kids. The kids will like feed off your energy. You will feed off theirs, and everything will be much more enjoyable. Yeah. All right, guys. If no one has any questions, I'll see you later. Bye bye. Take care.